and welcome to May's Love Talks. Love Talks is a monthly conversation that I host with industry experts with the sole goal of helping you awaken, expand, and empower you in your love life. I'm thrilled to have my guest with me this month, Fiorella Klein. She is based out of Sydney, Australia, so thank you so much for getting up so early and being with us today. Fiorella is a relationship coach and meditation teacher. She's also a highly lauded speaker and author. Her book, Spiritual Single and Searching, is definitely something you want to pick up and enjoy. Lots of infinite wisdom in there. And Fiorella, maybe what I'm going to do is invite you to share with the audience your own journey and what brought you to being a relationship coach.
Well, firstly, Andrea, I'd love to say thank you so much for having me on this morning. For me, it's 6 o'clock in Sydney, and, you know, I would do this for no one else but you, my darling. So, yeah, thank you for having me on. Thank you to everyone watching for putting up with my darling Australian accent. So, yeah, firstly, thank you so much. Deep gratitude. Now, to answer your question about my own journey in a nutshell, I was married myself I was in a long-term relationship for 6 years, married for the last 2. And I just felt a very deep disconnection from my ex-husband. And I couldn't quite put my finger on it, and I couldn't quite explain it to him. He wasn't necessarily interested in having a conscious journey with himself or with anybody else. And my business at the time, The Nourishing Goddess, was very much focused on women and women's wellness and spirituality. And we just grew in very, very different directions. Cut to me moving to London to be with someone that I had known in the flesh for a week. We met in New York. I fell madly in love. He was a relationship coach. I thought, okay, I'm going to be Tony and Sage Robbins, and, you know, I'm going to use your term from before we came on the call, we would gallop off into the sunset together. And as life happens, that's not what happened at all. It was an abusive relationship, and I found myself broke, living with my parents, having survived 2 very intense relationships, and a mess, quite frankly. And there were so many people in my personal circle, in my client circle, that was really suffering because of relationships. Now, as we know from Eastern philosophy, pain is part of life, but the suffering is optional. And so I started to realize that, you know, wellness is great and smoothies are great and all that sort of outside in approach is fantastic and it looks great on Instagram. But the real pain for a lot of people, and definitely my clients at the time, were their relationships, and relationship with self, their relationship with their partners, or the fact that they didn't have a relationship. It was all to do with love, the joy of it, the pain of it all. And I was at a Hay House workshop last year, and, you know, book ideas were coming to me, and I thought it was going to be on meditation or wellness or women's stuff. And all these messages kept coming in about being spiritual, single, and searching. And I rejected it at first. I deeply, deeply rejected it because I went, no, God, no, I don't want to be the love and sex guru. And that's what I've kind of turned into over the past 12 months. And so that's been my journey, is realizing that wellness, personal growth, self-development, all these labels that we love to attach to this sort of industry and field, it has to start with an inside-out approach. And mindfulness is not meditation, so that's something I'd like to address today. Mindfulness is the most powerful way that I know to connect to self. And you don't need to meditate a day in your life if you don't want to, but having an awareness of who you are and how you affect other people, I think that's what we're here to do. That's the journey. That's the work.
Amazing. Amazing. Isn't that funny? It's life's lessons that lead us to our greatest teachings and learnings and allow us to be teachers ourselves.
Absolutely.
I can so relate with that. So thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
So mindfulness, what is mindfulness then? What is your definition of what mindfulness is? Because we talk about the outside in a lot, and I know you and I are on the same page about it's really about nourishing our relationship with self that allows us to have more deep and meaningful relationships with others. But how does mindfulness come into creating that relationship with self? And what is mindfulness?
I love that question because there are so many versions, theories, definitions floating out there, and none of them are right and none of them are wrong. Like life, it's all about the lens that you look at something on your personal journey. You know, why is the sky blue? Some people are colorblind and don't see it as blue. So I don't think that Fiorella Klein's definition is the be all and end all, but this is my lens and how I'm looking at it. So maybe I can start by defining what it is not. So right now, one of my mentors and a fellow Australian, Sarah Wilson, is on a book tour in Canada right now, Canada and the US, for her book, First We Make the Beast Beautiful. And it's all about anxiety and how to be able to deal with anxiety. So for me, mindfulness has a very close relationship with mental health. And it definitely has on my own mental health journey. And I think that mental health is a subject that we don't talk about enough. It's not sexy enough, and people want to hide it a hell of a lot. So we have sky-high levels in my country and yours and around the world of anxiety and depression. So depression is, according to my definition, a looking to the past of what went wrong, of what didn't happen, of what we didn't achieve, of what we don't have, of regret. That is my definition of depression. And anxiety is a deep, deep fear of things not going right in the future, a fear about the future, of fucking it up in the future, of not finding that perfect. So if we apply it with a dating lens, it's not finding the perfect partner, of being too ugly, of being too fat, of always screwing it up and worrying. So if you're sad about the past or you're worrying about the future, let me tell you something, that ain't mindfulness. So let's start with what it is not in a mental health context. What it is the opposite of the two. In fact, it is the middle path of the two, and it's the right here, right now. So I'm being incredibly mindful by looking at this little black dot on my laptop and being with Andrea, my industry sister from Sydney to Canada, or Sydney to Vancouver, excuse me. That is mindfulness, being in the present moment. That is not reliant on anything, on anyone. When I used to be a yoga teacher, I would say to my students, right now in this moment, you have nothing to do, nowhere to go, and no one to be. And, going, doing, and being is all that we know how to do in present day society. So whenever you're running around and you're not feeling, within yourself, you were talking about before jumping on the call about waiting for that person to text. That is not mindfulness. Get present, get into the now. And I feel like there are a million techniques and tools to become mindful. So meditation, for me, according to my definition, is a tool for mindfulness. Meditation is not mindfulness, if that makes sense. It's just being present. It's being present with yourself. And how many people can honestly say, with the inclusion of these things, that they are truly mindful these days? So yeah, presence. There you go. In one word. Let me take a takeaway for people. Mindfulness is presence. Yeah, that's your tweet.
Perfect. Yeah, I love that. I was spending a little time falling down the YouTube rabbit hole and just seeing other people's definitions surrounding it. And there was a lovely quote that I shared before we hopped on to let people know that we were hopping on at 1. That he says, how can you connect or be in love if you're not present? Because it speaks about the disconnection between the mind and body. So your body can be in the moment, in the place, but your mind often is somewhere else. So how can you create that level of connection or be in the presence of love if you're not there? So mindfulness, and with the Buddhists, they speak about doing it through your breath, allows you to be present in the moment, to have that connection with others. And I think that's so vital in today's age of not only relationships, but even to find your way with grace to a relationship that honors you in the dating process, that you have to be present. So maybe share with your wisdom and your own journey on how you begin to even nurture a sense of mindfulness or presence.
So, okay, I'm going to apply this, Andrea, to a dating context rather than like okay, perfect, good. Nice. I see what we did there. Yeah. So, I have a hashtag on social media that I'm very passionate about. I feel like I need to get t-shirts made up of it. And it's hashtag solo date night. And so for me, as a single woman, my mindfulness practice and my dating practice is dating myself. Now, I can already hear the fleshy eye rolls around the world as people are watching this. And look, what I mean by that, I don't mean I date myself every day and I have some, ritual where no. What I mean is in my diary, one night every week, one weeknight, I don't see clients, I don't make social plans, and I just do something that I would love to do, with the caveat that it's alone, it's solo. So last week I went, even though it's starting to become winter here in Sydney, I went for a walk, not along the beach, but along the Corso of the beach where I'm living right now, and just turned my phone off. Of course, I Instagrammed it first, and then took my phone off, turned my phone off, and just walked and thought and breathed, as you said, is very much, for me, breathing and nature are very much what brings me into the present, and into presence. There you go. Very much. But, tonight's my solo date night. It'll be yoga at home with candles and, just doing a yin yoga practice alone at home. So I have found that on Valentine's Day, I took myself to go and see 50 Shades of Grey. I bought myself all of my favorite snacks, the kombucha and the kale and, what most guys wouldn't want to eat. And there's a joy for me in enjoying that solo time, there's joy in enjoying your own company. There's another tweetable for you. They're coming out everywhere. I hope you're writing these down. So that for me would be my number one takeaway for anyone watching this who says, how can I bring a deeper sense of mindfulness to my dating life? Have you actually tried dating yourself? Have you actually tried, getting to know what you like, what you don't like, who you are outside of relationship with anybody else? Because let me tell you, once that special person does come along, or once, you are on the dating carousel, solo time becomes that much more rare and that much more precious. So what do you actually like to do? Because once, let's say, Craig comes along into your life and he likes, watching sport on TV and he likes eating at the steakhouse, pretty soon you're wearing his favorite team's jersey as your pajamas, and you've gone from being vegetarian to liking your steak medium rare, and you've forgotten, which happen. I mean, let's bring a sense of gentleness to that. That's kind of what happens. You sort of, two people form this mishmash of identities and energies, and so just enjoy dating yourself. And I actually think people should continue to date themselves even once they're in a relationship, to come back to that presence.
Yeah, you there's so much in there. So let me see if I can just do this.
Unpack it all.
First and foremost is having the intention to do that. Mm-hmm. I think sometimes when people are single, they're like, well, I don't have anything to do tonight, so I guess I'll hang out with myself. Instead of intentionally saying, Wednesday night, I'm going to do this for me to learn how to enjoy my company, because I think a lot of people, when they're single, they don't enjoy their company. They're sitting in a place of lack. So intentionally doing something that nourishes and connects you with yourself, and that if you do get asked out on a date or a friend wants you to come over, that it's a no, I'm having a date with myself. It's not something you do because nothing else is going on, I think is really important there. It's a way of almost honoring yourself and the relationship that you have with self. Two, the biggie is, and oddly enough, when you were talking, I had flashbacks of the movie Runaway Bride come into my mind.
Oh, God.
Is in that film, Julia Roberts literally goes from relationship to relationship and says yes to getting married right away. It's like this falling into love with zero boundaries or an understanding of who she is. So there's something happens with Richard Gere, I can't remember what it is, and she runs away to really discover who she is and what she likes. Isn't it amazing how many of us can be wandering out there and not really truly knowing what we like, what music floats our boat? We get so influenced by so many different things. I think she even goes to a diner to decide what kind of eggs she likes. And it seems so nominal, but it's so important that we need to have a deep connection and understanding of who we are, so that when we get into relationship, we don't sacrifice or lose ourselves. Mm-hmm. And then that's a whole other kettle of fish, which would be another conversation. But it's so important to connect to those things. So much goodness in there. The intention of doing it, doing something that feeds you. And don't cheap out on your dates with yourself either.
Yes.
They're key. They're key. Now, there's something you said earlier that I want to kind of circle back around to, is this word disconnection. Mm-hmm. And really what that is, and what does that look and feel like? Because I, being in this industry for as long as I have, writing about it for over 15 years now, I think so many people out there have this high level of disconnection, but they don't even know that they're disconnected from themselves. So can you speak to either even your own experience or doing this work that you see where people are disconnected, that we can maybe even throw a few breadcrumbs their way, so this discontent, they can make the correlation to disconnection?
I love that. It's where to begin. It's so juicy. Look, I think that a lot of people, a lot of our society, as I mentioned, with anxiety and depression, that's disconnection incarnate, really. There is so much disconnection because we are so outwardly focused. And okay, I will put myself up as the guinea pig. I think the way I like to lead is by, not necessarily by example, but by sharing and by being vulnerable. And I never want to be a perfect leader. I want to be a relatable leader. And I think there's a difference in that. So I'm going to be vulnerable and relatable, hopefully, with this share. And that is that when I divorced or separated, because you have the separation before the divorce, in Australia anyway, we have these crazy laws. I think in LA, you can go to a ATM machine and just punch in your name and get divorced. But here in Australia, you have to be living separate from your spouse for 12 whole months before you can apply for a divorce.
That was me in Alberta. So yeah, not so.
Australia. So you get it. So we had to separate. And I had gone from being someone who, I all think, and I'm sorry I keep talking about it, but mental health is for me right now very, very important. And I think that we all sway towards either depression or anxiety. Mm-hmm. And it was interesting that for so many years I was someone that, I was a goth in a previous life and used to listen to Nine Inch Nails and, loved that kind of languishing emotion. And then bang, separated from my ex-husband, moved to London, experienced the abusive relationship, and just experienced anxiety like never before, and a constant, worrying and anxiousness about the future. And so why I'm mentioning this in the context of disconnection is I became completely disconnected from time. And this is, we've been talking about singles disconnection from time. And what I mean by that is I wanted to fill every single moment of my life. And I've not generally been a workaholic until the last 2 or 3 years. And, I can confess that. I think, having your own business, as you would know, there's always a blog post you can write. There's always something you can prepare. There's always something you can be doing as an entrepreneur. And that's the danger, is that you can be on this hamster wheel. So I became so disconnected and spent so much time on my laptop. Last winter I was out dancing, not drinking, but just dancing all the time, like levels of exhaustion. Yes, I was being mindful. Yes, I was meditating. Yes, I was exercising, clean eating, all of the external bullshit that, we like to tick in this industry. But yes, I was having even my solo date nights, but was I taking time to just rest and connect to things I was running away from? I think we become truly disconnected when we are in a constant state of running away from what we don't want to face. And I didn't want to face that my, marriage had broken down. I didn't want to face that I, a feminist and empowered woman, had experienced an abusive relationship and allowed myself to be treated in a way that I will never allow again. So there were all these things. There was all this stuff circling around in my head, and it hasn't really been until the last 3 months that I've just gone, Fiorella, enough. Okay, it's become, you were talking before we started recording about the story. I'm out of the story now. It's been 2 years. I've survived. I'm here. And what I was doing, and I feel like a lot of women do this, of course, it's not gender based, but a lot of women fill that space and that disconnection by being everything to everyone. And I feel that was me last year. I volunteered for things. I was, what can I do? I organized Christmas parties. I just be. I've got 2 elderly parents. So, I was constantly trying to help them. What do you need? What can I do? Talk about disconnection. Don't be everything to everyone, and don't be of service from a place of exhaustion. And I think that is the modern day disconnection, amplified. We all have these, so I used my own story as an example, but we all have this core wounding or this story that we're running away from. Because the person who is at peace with themselves is connected with themselves and can stop and say, you know what, this Sunday morning, I'm not going to do anything. And not doing anything does not mean Netflix, says the girl who watched Vikings for hours last night. But, just being. So I think I answered your question in a roundabout way, but that's my story.
No, it's perfect. I love that. And as a woman who's lived with a lot of anxiety the majority of her life, I totally can relate. And it's a journey, and it's a decision to look at the places that most of us try to avoid. And, you can't hide it from it actually for too long anyways, especially if you're burning your candle at either end. You will run out of wick. So when we can be intentional and get curious about the anxiety or the depression and start going on a little search and rescue mission for ourselves, I think that's so very, very helpful. I just want to acknowledge Alex. He's been giving us thumbs up, and 1,000% true. So thank you for watching.
Thank you, Alex.
I know we've had people popping in and out. So if you do have a question at all for Fiorella or myself, please throw it in there. We love to include people in these conversations. And I'd be curious to hear from people what mindfulness means for you, or how you could deepen a practice of mindfulness in your life. So I love you touched on what does it look like and what does it feel like? And that could be a very personal thing with regards to disconnection. So, and I just talked about having a sense of curiosity to go searching. So what are some ways that, it's going to be twofold, that we can support ourselves in that journey, and as well, how to give ourselves the space and know that we're operating from an empty cup. So I'm a big proponent of self-care, and I think self-care has been hijacked a little bit by consumerism, that you have to like buy things and do things, and it's salt baths and body stuff.
Oh my God, so much to say on that.
but self-care can be not doing anything. It can be hitting the pause button on life to just be present with yourself. To it can be saying no. It can be sitting down and taking care of your bookkeeping that you've been procrastinating about. That's actually an act of self-care. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on self-care, because you lit up, girl, and how you fill your cup. And then also how, we can all support ourselves in that journey to, I'll use the word healing that disconnection and coming more into alignment with ourselves, because we're talking about mindful connection. And I fully believe that we need to nurture that relationship mindfully, intentionally, in order for us to be successful in dating, romantic relationships, family relationships, work relationships. So let's maybe touch on the hot ticket item first, which is self-care, and let's tie the mindfulness into that.
Okay, so self-care and mindfulness. There's so much. Look, I'm going to start, Andrea. You asked a question by, you touched on something which was, how can we tell that we're serving from an empty cup? That was something that you just asked then, and I'm going to start there if I may. If you are experiencing a sense of exhaustion, of just feeling stressed out, if you're having anxiety attacks, or if you've got that little, twitch in your eye. I know I'm really super stressed when my eye starts twitching. That, for me, here we go. This is my takeaway to begin with. Having had a relationship with your body for, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, for anyone who's watching this, you know what your body is constantly speaking to you. And we think it's not. And if you don't think your body speaks to you, that's your number one homework in terms of self-care and mindfulness. Start to listen. Start to fucking listen, because our bodies speak to us all the time. And what angers me is that we don't listen until we're in the doctor's office with a diagnosis. So how about we look at prevention as opposed to cure? It's an old cliche, but it's very, very true. So if you don't know the signs, Andrea's nodding when I said the eye twitch, exactly. We know that's our sign. Get to know your signs, number one. Number two, if you know your signs and you know that right now, if you're relating to what we're saying, my eye's twitching, my back hurts, I'm getting tension, headaches, stop. Just stop. And so what stopping looks like, and what I think self-care truly is, and the reason why I lit up so much is that, I'll put my hand up and say, when I started the Nourishing Goddess, which was a business all about women, nurturing themselves, I was putting up the posts of bubble baths and saying, I literally it's now archived on my Instagram, but there was a girl with her toes peeking out and rose petals everywhere and, blah, 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 self-care. Let me tell you what self-care really is. When shit gets real and everything's falling down around you, and, you're in a relationship or you're in a sexual arrangement, because we all know that that's very much part of dating these. If you're not serving your highest needs and life is feeling out of balance, to be able to stop and get the help that you need and put all the pieces together, that is self-care. Self-care is not a green smoothie overflowing with pieces of kiwi fruit. Self-care is not doing yoga in a G-string on Hawaii. Self-care is not all of the, I get very passionate because I feel like it's been, as you say, hijacked by a standard of perfection.
Yeah.
Real life does not have a filter, right? Real life does not, involve a screen or a tablet or any of this crap. And so we were talking about before about boundaries. To me, self-care is boundaries and is being able to be brave enough to say, I need help. That's what self-care is to me. And, as I mentioned, my own journey with anxiety only really started getting better and stronger the last 3 months because I stopped. And, it's interesting here. I'll share another story. I was running on this hamster wheel of, I've started this new business like the last 12 months in terms of relationship coaching. And I started a Facebook group at the beginning of the year called Mindful Lovers. And I was getting that up and running. And, all these things were happening. And there was one day that I had an anxiety attack in the morning, an anxiety attack in the evening. My thoughts were going places that, weren't very healthy. But I had a Facebook group call in the evening. And I went, what do I do? And I never miss my Facebook calls. Ever, ever, ever. I might have postponed a client here or there because I wasn't feeling well, but that Facebook group is very sacred to me. And I went, well, what do I do? And, my hair was dirty and I had no makeup on. And you know what? I showed up on the call and I said to them, look, guys, I'm going to cry my way through it because I've had a crap of a day. And these are my top 5 tips of what self-care actually is. And it was things like, going to see a psychologist, going to speaking with a coach, telling your friends and family what's going on. So I texted all my girlfriends and I said, my 4 closest and said, I really kind of need your help right now in keeping me accountable to looking after myself. I took a step back from everything. I can't remember what the 5 things were, but one of my quotes that I put on social was being a mindful lover, something along the lines of, consists of knowing when to take time out and when to say, I need help. So I think that's the biggest takeaway I would have in terms of this question that you've asked me is look for the signs, know when you need some help, know when you need to, and don't feel like you have to, as I was saying before, be everything to everyone. It's okay to let people look after you. So if you are in a relationship and you are watching this or you have just started dating someone, I think being honest with them and saying, I am an anxious person or I'm a depressed person or I'm going through this thing right now. If they leave you as a result of that, they were never going to be with you through the hard times anyway. And I think that as I'm saying to you here, and I love that you were honest and you just shared, which I'm not sure if you have before about your own journey with anxiety. Let's just get really real about what self-care is. It's booking the massage. Around that time, I was booking a weekly massage, just like a $30, the cheap Chinese and Thai places, you must have them. I think they're everywhere. It's like $30 for half an hour and just really, really, really took care of myself. And so now my number 1 priority on a daily basis is looking after myself and doing what feels right. And I think I'm showing up as an even better person as a result, for sure.
That makes complete sense. That makes complete sense because you can't be anything to anybody else if you're not being it for yourself first. You just can't. And I'd like to say it can mean a bath, but
yes.
It can also mean all the other tough stuff. It doesn't have to be pretty all the time. I love you spoke to this idea of self-care having this filter or this sense of perfection. It can be really messy as long as it means it's taking care of you.
Yes.
And being honest. So I love how you segued into asking for help. I think not enough of us ask for help. I'm probably going to butcher this, but Brené Brown speaks to that a lot of us, especially as women, we love to give, give, give. We have no problem giving, but we have a really hard time in receiving because there is a subconscious or maybe even conscious level of judgment. So you're struggling. So I, being, powerful or capable, can come in and do the saving or helping. But if someone's doing that for me, that means there's something wrong with me. So you can't give without judgment if you can't receive without judgment as well. So that's a great place for us to check ourselves. But asking for help is huge. I just got my ass kicked in April. And if it wasn't for my girlfriends and my mentors and my coaches, listening to my body. Any of you are watching and you didn't see last month's talk with Dr. Rachel Apinga, which was all about body talk, about how our bodies show up and speak to us when we're in a state of disconnection, please go watch it. And I'm actually working with her now to realign my body because my body was like, help, I'm in a state of... So that was me having to be mindful and connected and present with what's going on with me. And I think in a state of flux, which can happen often when we're dating or in a new relationship, we're on this sort of higher resonating level of anxiety because we're fearful that we're not going to be loved or accepted or that we're not good enough. It's always that self-worth thing that kind of tries to sneak in, that we need to be more mindful of staying in connection with ourselves, of taking care of us, to listening to what our bodies are saying.
Andrea, I want to just touch on something you've just said there about dating in a state of anxiety. I was on a podcast. I did a podcast interview on the weekend with another soul sister, and she said to me, "What's my number one piece of dating advice for anyone who wants to be able to do it mindfully?" And if you're in a state of anxiety about anything, but especially about dating, don't date. I'm sorry, it's not going to be very popular. It's not very sexy what I'm about to say, but if you're dating from a state of lack or looking outside yourself for love, don't date.
Yeah.
If you know who you are, to your reference of the runaway bride, if you know what kind of eggs you like, if you know that, you like swearing, or you're super sexual, or you love eating peanut butter with your fingers from the jar, or you like whatever it is, if you know yourself inside out, outside in, you accept yourself, you know the value that you bring to a relationship, date. Perfect.
Yeah.
If that doesn't sound like you, don't, because all you will attract is, there are a lot of, and I don't want to demonize anybody, but without realizing there are a lot of people out there, men and women, who are energy vampires. And there are a lot of people on dating apps who are just looking to get. And if you're a giver, male or female, you will get, to use your phrase, your ass kicked. Yeah. You will get sucked up, spat out, and hung out to dry, and you will be more exhausted than ever before. And I'm putting my hand up to say that was pretty much, I've been on dating apps 4 times, and every single time, that is the experience I personally have. Now, my best friend just got engaged, just locked in a wedding venue to her Tinder date, 4 years later. So I'm not demonizing them. I'm not saying they don't work, but maybe the mindset I was operating from was not going to attract my highest match. And Andrea, something that I really want to speak to before we run out of time, because I know you and I could chat forever, is the sense that if you don't listen to anything else I've just said, this whole interview, please listen to this. Do not date until you are in a state that I actually did this exercise with my Facebook group. Please write down 3 to 5 things that are unique to you that you bring to a relationship. So is it that you are a really good cook? Is it that you're a really, not bad between the sheets? Is it that you, what are your beautiful, unique qualities that you bring, that you know the value of the lover, of the mindful lover that you are? So that if you enter a relationship with, Sam or Sally, and Sam or Sally say, well, you know what, I'm not really into this, you come in full and you leave relatively. I mean, the ego will always be a little bruised, but you leave still having that backpack of those 5 things that go, well, you know what, I'm still a great listener, and I still have an amazing knowledge of literature, blah, 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 blah. So know the value, leave having the value, and date having that value. And how to get to knowing, write it down, journal, date yourself, and start to, here's another really controversial exercise I ask people to do. Meditate for a minute on what would happen if you never met someone. What would happen if you spent the rest of your life single? What would you do with your life? What would you do differently? And I think this is very confronting for a lot of people to hear, that it may never happen. And I'm not asking us to operate from that lack mentality. It's just more an exercise in removing the anxiety that, for me personally, if my life was just made up of maybe 2 dogs and a nice place somewhere near the beach, I mean, sure, I would love to have a partner, but just my dogs and the beach, I'd be pretty happy with that. I would be, that would fill me up. And yeah. I've sort of made a peace with that at 35, that if that is going to be my life, it's okay. And so I'm just inviting your viewers and your audience, Andrea, to just have a meditation on what would it be like if this magical person never arrived. And if you can have a peace and a power in that, it's going to be so much more amazing if and when Sam or Sally does come into your life. And I'm not sure what your thoughts are on that, but that's something that I've definitely found very helpful.
Yeah, I love that, because for me, what I'm hearing is it removes the attachment.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and when we let go of the attachment, we're much more open and free, not only to give ourselves permission to actually truly show up and be ourselves, but to show up as ourselves in relationship as well, should it arise. But when we're so attached to an outcome, we, in fact, are diminishing or almost robbing ourselves in a sense. Yeah.
You live your life, you do you.
Yeah.
I've got one girlfriend who I try not to coach my girlfriends. I don't know if that's something you struggle with, but I have to wait for them to say, Fiorella, I need your coach advice, and then that launches in. But one of my girlfriends says, oh, well, when I meet my partner and, he's going to do this, and then, finances are going to run like that, and we're going to buy an apartment. And I'm like, oh, sugar, like, what if you never meet someone who wants to buy an apartment with you? So I'm kind of, personally, as the coach and the woman, I'm living my life like I will always be single. I'm going to buy my own investment property. I'm going to, go on this holiday. These are the places that I want to visit. These are my health plans. And if someone joins them, fantastic. But if they don't, there's not going to be this linchpin that gets pulled. And, maybe in 10 years' time, I'm pulling my hair out because my plans were based around meeting this person. So I like that, the removal of attachment. That's exactly what this exercise is.
Yeah, absolutely. So, so many powerful conversations that we're having in here, and we're all over the place, and I don't care. It's great. I do want to acknowledge Alex. He very transparently has shared something that's going on in his life. I don't know if you can see it, so I'm going to put it up on the screen.
But let me just, here we go. I just found out 5 hours ago. Yes.
Okay, so he's asking for advice. Should I be adamant about convincing her to let go through her own process, growth? So this is a friend that's doing something that sounds like it's maybe causing a bit of discomfort even for Alex as a friend. What are your thoughts on this?
Sorry, I'm just reading the whole question.
This is going to be a recording after. So for everyone, I'll just read this. I just found out 3 hours ago my friend is seeing a married man and thinks he's in love with her. Maybe he is. I told her she should not get attached until he leaves his wife because it's morally wrong and not good for the soul. It's a fantasy until he steps up and leaves. Question, should I be adamant about convincing him or her to let her go through her own process, growth? He is saying one thing but doing another and is still living in the same home as his wife. The entire thing is wrong. She's a friend and mentioned she loved him, and clearly I have things to say. How far do I go? Should I spend time trying to convince her? I don't believe she's practicing self-love. Thank you both, and I'm enjoying the live. So what do you think?
So much to say. Okay, I've just opened Alex's comment and now I can't see you. I'm not going to do anything because I don't want to do anything.
No worries.
Okay, so Alex, I love this question and I love your bravery in sharing this question with us. And oh my Lord, this is a whole chat that we could have. Okay, so again, this is just my lens on things, but so I've just said my lens on things. What you've just shared with us is your lens on things, and your friend has her lens on why she's justifying the choices that she's making. And look, let me tell you that when I left my husband, I had met the other man on an overseas work trip. I came home and I left my husband. I didn't sleep with the other man. Yes, I kissed him, but I left my husband first, then moved to London. And so there was no sort of overlap. I had been very unhappy for a long time, and I don't mind sharing this quite, vulnerably and authentically. And one of my girlfriends, I sort of said to her, look, you know, I've noticed that your partner is a little bit weird with me now, and I don't really understand why. We used to be kind of close. And she said to me, oh, that's because he and I don't look very favorably upon infidelity. And those words just rang in my ears because I didn't feel my lens felt that I came home. I said to my husband, I've met somebody else. I've not been happy for a while. I'm going to pack my bags. This isn't right for you or for I. And I left. And it was a very clean cut thing in my eyes. And yet in their eyes, in their lens, I had been unfaithful. And that rocked me. Her judgment, that projection really ripped me apart. And our friendship has never quite been the same. Mm-hmm. So we all have different morals and ethics around especially relationships. So Alex, I think she's very lucky to have a friend like you who is so concerned about her. However, where I would exercise caution is coming from a place of judgment and telling her that it's wrong and telling her it's a fantasy. I wish that girlfriend had just listened to me. I think what she needs right now is for you to just maybe listen. You do have the right, however, to have a boundary to say, look, this is something that I don't really agree with, and I don't really want to talk to you about it, but know that if you need me, I'm here. That's another option for you. But you've asked, to answer your question, you've said, how far should I go? Should I spend time trying to convince her? No, because right now she's in a world of the infatuation, what I call, there are 5 stages in any relationship, and the first one is infatuation. And she's wrapped up in oxytocin right now, and she's not going to listen to you or anybody. She's at a place where she's looking to this man to answer, to fill a void in her. That's very much what typically happens here. And interestingly, when I saw a psychologist afterwards and explained to her that both this man and I had left our partners to be with each other, she says to me, 85% of people who leave their partner to be with another person, it doesn't work out. So I think we all know that this is one big, hot, giant mess, but I would just mindfully go about living your life, be there for her as a friend, and listen to her to a point where it's not encroaching on any of your boundaries. And the second it does, you have the right to tell her so. Andrea, I'm curious on your thoughts on this.
Yeah, much of what I would advise mirrors what you have to say. I think it's important for you, because this is obviously something that has created some upset, because you're sharing it with us, that you acknowledge those feelings and maybe even get a little curious as to where those are arising from. Because when we feel some discontent or upset or perhaps anger or disappointment, that's actually something we can own for ourselves. So it's a wonderful opportunity for you. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with sharing and claiming those feelings and sharing them with her. Look, this situation has me feeling this way. I don't agree, but it's really her decision to make. This is her own journey to take, and she's on it for a reason. But it's for her to discover. And we can never convince someone else of something. We need to learn our lessons through our own experiences, especially if we want to learn what those lessons are. Life has a funny way of continuing to deliver them to us until we do. So as a friend, you can share how you're feeling and then hold space, or as Fiorella very beautifully shared, is make sure that you're upholding your own boundaries so that you're honoring yourself through this process as a friend too. Yeah, and thank you so much for sharing what's going on and being so transparent and authentic. I think, that's an invitation to others. It doesn't necessarily need to be here with us, but with friends, is that it's in sharing these things that we can actually process and move through them instead of holding them, because that's sort of the breeding ground for resentment and potentially the ending of relationships or friendships. So, but that's always a choice for us. We get to decide how we show up and how we share. So thank you for showing up and sharing today, Alex. So we're just coming to the end of our talk, and I always have three really powerful questions to ask my guests. Okay. So get yourself ready, Fiorella. Here they come. So I think I'm a big believer in the importance of gratitude. I think it keeps us high vibing. It keeps our perspective of circumstance in check. And when we're looking for the good and looking for the love in circumstances, then it tends to show up and reveal itself more to us. So what I would like to invite to you is to share with us right now 3 things, like right now we're talking about presents, that you are most grateful for.
I love that question. I love that question. I have a practice in my morning ritual where I write down every day 5 things that I'm grateful for. So I really love that question. Okay. Right now, I am really grateful for my girlfriends. You were saying, Andrea, that, you've lent on yours recently, and I've got 4 really dear friends that are just amazing, and over the last 2 years have definitely been my backbone. So yeah, very, very grateful for the 4 of them. I am grateful that I have been house sitting for the last month close to the beach here in Sydney, and rent free, and have been able to save and enjoy these 2 beautiful cats who are very, very cheeky. So that's been a really beautiful experience. And number 3, it's interesting. I'm listening to your fellow Canadian, Danielle Laporte's podcast right now, and she is constantly talking about water. And she loves a charity that I think it's called Water Aid or something, that is for helping people that are much, much less fortunate than us. And that's something that's constantly comes around in my mind, is the fact that there are women, mainly in Africa, that have to walk, kilometers and kilometers every single day. And sometimes they would rather drink contaminated water then go for the clean water, because there's a chance of them being raped. Like that just blows my mind and destroys my soul. And then here I am drinking my alkaline water from my filter, like such a wanker. So yeah, I'm grateful for water. I'm grateful for the fact that I can drink my 3-4 liters that I drink a day and I don't have to even think about it. So I think always being grateful for the things that as Westerners we don't even have to give a second thought is hugely, hugely important.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Thank you for that. Perspective is a powerful thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Perspective is a powerful thing. Thank you for sharing those. So my next question for you is, well, for some it's a doozy. For others, it's very easy to answer. I'd love to hear your definition of what love is.
No, it's not a doozy at all, because I love love. I always have. What is love? Love is the divine. And I think that it's that simple. It's that simple and it's that complicated, actually. It is why we love it so much, and it is why we fear it so much. I think self-love is to see the divine in ourselves, and to love someone else is to see the divine in them. To love, having a love of nature, having a love of animals, having a love of food, whatever it is to look at that object, person, or place through the lens of divinity. Boom.
Love it. I love that. I love that. I love that. And finally, I want to ask you, what do you know right now, again, bringing it back to presence and where you are in your life?
I'm wondering about these questions, just by the way.
What do you know to be most true?
What I know for sure, my Oprah moment. Okay.
Yeah.
What do I know for sure? Okay. Change is inevitable. That is what I know for sure. Nothing is forever. Nothing. And the sooner you make peace with that, the stronger you are as a human being. If you can adapt to change, if you can meet change with grace and gratitude, whether it be a divorce, whether it be a hurricane, or whether it be winning the lottery, or, so there's change having to play big and take it to the next level. And then there's, change that, as you said, knocks us on our ass and has us gasping for breath. That is inevitable. And the second you make peace with that and you accept that and you become more flexible and fluid rather than rigid and regimented, life is going to be a much more pleasant experience for you.
I love that. My yoga practice this morning talked about how we can go through life with more grace if we almost mimic the trees and being movable. Yeah.
Yes.
And
my yoga teacher, he's online. Travis Elliott is a beautiful yin yoga teacher, and he talks about exactly the same thing. So it's the yoga coming through right now. What can I say?
Amazing. So let's wrap this in a big, gorgeous bow. And in being able to navigate our way through change with more grace and gratitude, how does presence come into play?
It's funny. I was talking to a girlfriend on the phone, one of my 4, and she's got lots of changes coming into her life. Interestingly, change that she manifested and wanted, and now that it's coming, she's freaking out, which is so the human condition. I said to her, and what I say to myself and what I say to your audience, to have the presence and the grace through the change, just take everything in moment to moment steps, day to day pieces, and don't try and think about, but in a week, but in 6 months, but in 12 years. Just, I said to her, right now, you need to put part A and part B of the moving parts into place, and then just do that. Focus on, I would almost say, if you're going through a massive amount of change, like for me, this house sitting thing wraps up in a month, and I'm very excited because I'll finally be moving after 2 years of living since my separation, living in and out of a suitcase. I'll be moving into my own place, which is very exciting. But you know, there are moving parts. So right now, today, for me, I need to wait for the woman that I'm house sitting for to give me that date. Right? She needs to give. So this is a practical example for your viewers. I need the date that she's coming back into this apartment before I can start looking for an apartment, because otherwise I'm just, you know, chasing my tail. So I'm just mindfully in the present, getting very excited that I'll be able to live in my own place, in my suburb of choice. And that's it. That's all I know for today. So for your viewers, when change is coming, what can you do about it today? Do that and then stop. And then, you know, the next day you do what you can about that situation for the day. And what's that quote? I want to end it on this note. What's that quote? People overestimate what they can do in 5 years, but underestimate what they can do in 12 months. So, the end.
I love it. Yes, moment to moment. I think that's brilliant. Now, let's talk about where people can find you. Do you have anything going on? If someone wants your book, where can they get it?
Absolutely. Okay, let's talk.
With that.
My online home is fiorellaklein.com. I'm on Facebook and Instagram mostly, but I am on Twitter as well, if that's anyone's, flavor. My book is currently, I put that on there because Hay House told me to. My book is currently in the works, but it's currently a 4-part blog series. So if people are interested in my kind of writing, jump on Fiorella Klein. And Spiritual Single and Searching is currently my blog series. It's getting turned into a book. But the offer that I have for your audience is to join my group, Mindful Lovers. Anyone that's interested in 6 hours of coaching a month in this beautiful group, I would be happy to offer your audience a 1-week free trial, completely obligation free. If they like it, fantastic. If they don't, you leave after the week. And the best way to do that is to add me on Facebook, and then I can pop you in the group and you can join us for a week and see what you are. So that's my offer for your audience, is to come and coach with me at a much, much lower price tag. It's $11 Australian, so even cheaper for you guys in Canada. I think that's half, like $5 Canadian a week or something ridiculous, to come and coach with me. So that's what I'd like to offer.
Thank you for that generous offer. So we'll make sure that we link everything up in the comments below the video so everyone can find that really easily as well. Thank you so much for being on today. What a wonderful conversation. Lots of twists and turns and tons of wisdom nuggets. So if you caught the end or just the beginning, I encourage you to come back and watch the full replay. It will continue to reside on Facebook, but I will be sharing it on YouTube as well. And I'll share that link with you, Fiorella, and you can share it with your crew as well. But thank you. Thank you so much. And such a pleasure. It's so lovely to have people like you out in the world doing what you're doing. So thank you.
Thanks, Andrea. Thank you so much for having me, darling.
My pleasure. And thank you, everyone, for watching. Next month, we're going to be talking about love and money. So stay tuned for details about that.